The divorce was his idea. When Ethan Gu said, "We're done," his tone was calm, and his eyes steady. He didn't even look like he was ending a marriage, more like canceling a meeting that had run past its time. I didn't cry. Didn't beg. I just said okay. We walked into City Hall together. I was wearing a beige coat, simple makeup, and low heels. I looked polished, put together, like the kind of woman who came for paperwork, not closure. The woman at the counter glanced between us and asked gently, "Are you sure you want to proceed?" Ethan answered before I could. Yes. His voice was low and unwavering. For a moment, I almost believed he was the one being abandoned. The staff handed us the divorce certificate. I took it first, folded it carefully, and placed it in my bag. Ethan said nothing the entire time. Not even a goodbye. We walked out of the building, side by side. Outside, the wind blew across the wide steps. I turned to him. "Ethan," I said, "if one day you come to regret this, don't tell me." He paused, then gave me a rare, almost indifferent smile. "I won't." I laughed. Good. And then I walked away. In that moment, I thought about the irony. A man who spent 3 years treating me like background noise finally chose to cut me loose the day I stopped chasing him. I wasn't sad. I felt quiet. For 3 years, I played the perfect wife. I kept the house spotless, cooked when he remembered to come home, and never asked where he went when he didn't. I learned the names of his clients, remembered their birthdays, laughed at the same tired jokes at his business dinners. He never even learned how I liked my coffee. People said I was lucky. Ethan Gu was successful, tall, and never raised his voice. But they didn't see how he never really looked at me. How every date night felt like a networking event. How I once got food poisoning and he still left for a client meeting. It wasn't cheating. It wasn't abuse. It was indifference. Cold, practiced indifference. And now, it was over. I didn't go back to our apartment. I had already moved my essentials to a short-term rental the week before. When I sensed this coming, I spent that evening reviewing emails and organizing documents. I canceled the shared credit cards, transferred my portion of the savings, called the building manager to remove Ethan's name from the emergency contact list. Every step clean, precise, legal. No one wins in a divorce, they say. But I didn't feel like I lost either. At midnight, I sat on the sofa in my quiet, unfamiliar apartment and looked at the envelope labeled divorce certificate. I didn't cry. I didn't drink. Instead, I opened a locked drawer, pulled out a file folder, and placed the certificate neatly inside. Behind it were the documents I had been quietly collecting for months, transaction records, asset flows, screenshots, and a USB drive labeled L.S. Lena Shu, the intern-turned-mistress who thought she was invisible. Ethan may have ended our marriage today, but tomorrow, I'd begin something else. The first time I met Lena Shu was at Ethan's company anniversary banquet. She wore a white satin dress, delicate high heels, and a wine-red lip color that made her look sweet and seductive at the same time. A PR assistant whispered her name as she passed. "That's Lena, the intern Ethan personally brought in last year. Background's clean, pretty obedient." I remembered her because of what happened later that night. While Ethan was giving his speech, I went to the restroom and saw her standing in the hallway, heels off, holding her phone, talking to someone with a smile. "Yeah, I'm still at the event. He's speaking now, So boring. But don't worry. I'll make sure he doesn't leave with her tonight." She didn't notice me at first. When she finally turned and saw me, she froze for just a second before giving me a sweet smile. "Oh, hi, Mrs. Gu, right?" I smiled back. That's me. She looked nervous. I didn't say anything more. That was our first encounter. At the time, I still wasn't sure. I had doubts. Of course, missed calls. Changed passwords. Unfamiliar perfume, but no hard evidence. So I waited. I didn't ask Ethan. Didn't check his phone. Didn't snoop. I watched. Lena started appearing more often. At events. In group photos. In company social media posts. Always standing just a bit too close to Ethan. Always dressed just a bit too well for a junior intern. I started compiling screenshots. Every appearance. Every interaction. And then I found it, the red wine glass. It was in a WeChat group photo from a late-night dinner Ethan said he didn't attend. He claimed he'd gone to visit a friend in the hospital. But there he was. Caught in the background. Raising a glass. Lena had tagged it, best team ever. That was when I knew. Still, I said nothing. Instead, I upgraded my cloud storage. Bought a second phone. And hired Grace, my friend from college who now worked as a cybersecurity consultant. I need a quiet check on Ethan's digital footprint. I said. She didn't ask why. Within days. She had everything. Text messages. Video calls. Hotel reservations. Financial transfers to a personal account under Lena's name. One photo showed Ethan entering Lena's apartment at 11:52 p.m. and leaving at 6:15 the next morning. Another showed them vacationing in Sonia, on the same dates he told me he was overseas on business. When I received the final file, I didn't scream. Didn't cry. I opened a new document titled Divorce Strategy and started outlining my plan. Grace looked at me over the rim of her coffee cup. You're calm. I've had time. Are you going to blow it all up? No. I said. I'm going to do it by the book. Quiet. Legal. And irreversible. She nodded. Let me know what you need. I'll make sure nothing leaks early. Thanks. I said. Because once it starts, I want it to go fast. That night, I sat alone in my rental apartment. Surrounded by silence. I thought about all the times I had swallowed questions. Softened my voice. Made myself small just to keep a marriage intact. Ethan didn't cheat because Lena was special. He cheated because he thought I'd never leave. When I first married Ethan, I didn't sign a prenup. He didn't ask for one. And I didn't offer. At the time, I thought it meant he truly cared about me, not the money. Not the status. Just me. Now I realize, it wasn't that he was generous. He simply didn't think I was smart enough to protect myself. Back then, I didn't ask questions about the company shares or the trusts his family managed. I stayed quiet during those business dinners when they talked in half code, nodding like I understood. I was too afraid of seeming insecure. But I remembered everything. And now, I was done being quiet. With Grace's help, I traced the asset map. It was cleaner than I expected. Ethan had consolidated most of his holdings under a single umbrella company. From there, he had used my signature, granted under a general power of attorney from the second year of our marriage, to authorize 3 high-value asset transfers. All of them happened in the past 6 months. And 2 of them were clearly connected to Lena. Grace zoomed in on one entry. See this? She said, pointing to a fund titled LS Wellness Ventures. He registered it under her initials. The transfer came from your joint account. How much? $2 million. With a trailing contract that ties the startup back to one of Ethan's offshore funds. He's hiding equity through her. I stared at the screen. I'd let this man sleep in my bed while he funneled money to his mistress, using my legal signature. Grace was still calm, tapping through the paperwork like she was sorting groceries. You want to report it directly or through a financial attorney? Let's start with documentation. I want a full paper trail. She nodded. Already working on it. I'll have the forensic report ready by Friday. Good. After she left, I walked into the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror, and pulled my hair into a tight ponytail. I wasn't angry. I was focused. Ethan thought this would end quietly. He assumed that because I didn't fight. I didn't know how. He was about to find out what it looked like when I did. The next day, I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer, not Naomi, my divorce attorney, but a corporate compliance expert Grace recommended. I showed her the documents, the transfers, the timeline. She whistled low. He's sloppy. I know. She skimmed through Lena's name on one of the beneficiary forms. And she's stupid. I know that. Too. The lawyer leaned back. We can push this two ways: civil suit for misuse of marital assets, or criminal investigation for financial fraud. You'll need to pick a lane. I didn't even hesitate. Both. She smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. That night, I went home and rewatched the video Ethan had sent me a year ago, some cheesy anniversary edit with piano music and soft filters. He had written, "To the woman who makes me better every day." I deleted it. Then I opened my calendar, blocked off 3 hours for the coming Monday, and labeled it, "Meeting, Financial Ruin, His." Monday, 9 a.m. sharp. I walked into Ethan's company like I still belonged there. Technically, I did. Though I held no formal title. My name remained on multiple legal documents as an executive partner, thanks to paperwork he had me sign years ago. Assuming I'd never use it. The front desk receptionist froze when she saw me. "Mrs. Gu, I mean, Ava. I'm here for a board-level review," I said calmly. "Is the conference room available?" She stammered something and nodded. I didn't wait for her to announce me. I walked straight in. The company's conference room hadn't changed: polished oak table, glass walls, faux plants in each corner trying to fake warmth. Ethan's name was still on the welcome board. CEO Ethan Gu. He wasn't in yet. That was fine. I opened my laptop and connected to the projector. Grace had prepared the presentation: 52 pages of tracked transfers, falsified records, and internal memos linking Lena to misappropriated funds. The door opened behind me. Ethan walked in, followed by 2 board members and his assistant. He paused when he saw me. "Ava? Morning. What is this?" "A review," I said, clicking to the first slide. "Of how you've been using joint assets to fund your mistress and lie to your shareholders." He glanced at the board members, then back at me. "You don't have the authority. I have your signature," I said, pointing to the bottom of a document on the screen. "General power of attorney. You gave it to me the year after we married. Remember?" His face hardened. I continued, detailing how he'd funneled joint funds into Lena's projects, how he used company reimbursements to pay for their vacations, and how those transactions breached multiple clauses in his investor contracts. By the time I reached slide 30, his forehead was slick with sweat. One board member leaned forward. "Ethan, is this accurate?" He didn't answer. "I'll be submitting these to the Financial Ethics Office this afternoon," I said, standing. "But I thought you deserved to hear it first, from your wife." "Ex-wife," he muttered. "Right," I said with a smile. "Thanks for the reminder." I unplugged the laptop and walked out, leaving them in silence. In the hallway, I passed Lena. She had on her usual too-short skirt and fake innocence. When she saw me, she blinked in surprise. "Ava." "Hi, Lena," I said, not slowing down. "You should probably head upstairs. They might be talking about you soon." She stood there, lips slightly parted, confused. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. Back at home, I poured myself a coffee and opened the group chat I had muted for weeks, one filled with Ethan's mutual power couple friends, who once thought I was the boring wife tagging along. I dropped in a single message. Check the news later. And then I logged off. An hour later, the headlines broke. CEO under investigation for financial misconduct. Sources link Goo Corp funds to personal affair. I didn't call Ethan. He didn't call me. We had nothing left to say. Ethan tried to contain the fallout with a PR campaign. He pushed a statement through the company's official channel, claiming the reports were misunderstandings and taken out of context. He mentioned that the company would continue operating normally and that I, his former spouse, had acted out of emotional distress. I wasn't surprised. Men like Ethan always try to clean up their mess by painting themselves as the victim. He underestimated how quickly the public turns when receipts are involved. The next day, Grace leaked the full report anonymously. Every transaction, every hotel bill, every fake invoice. Lena's name appeared in 12 of them. The document spread like wildfire. By noon, 2 of Ethan's minor investors had pulled out. One of them issued a public statement saying, "Goo Corp has breached basic financial ethics. We are reevaluating all ties." I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. The truth was doing its job. Meanwhile, Lena tried to salvage her image. She deleted her social media for 24 hours. Then came back with a long caption over a black and white photo of herself looking down. "We are all learning. Please let me grow through this." The comments weren't kind. "You were growing in a married man's bed? Grow privately. Please." Even influencers who used to tag her stopped mentioning her at all. One posted a vague quote about boundaries and sisterhood, which everyone understood was a quiet unfollow. Grace called me that evening. "You sure you want to go through with the next phase?" "Yes. You could stop here and still win." "I don't just want to win," I said. "I want it airtight." She sighed. "Then you'll need to confront the offshore accounts next. He's got at least 2 tied to a holding company in the Cayman Islands. It's murky, but not untouchable. Do it." I spent the next few days compiling statements, notarizing affidavits, and prepping a formal complaint for the Business Oversight Committee. Every page felt like another lock clicking into place. Ethan didn't reach out, but his assistant did. She emailed me a single sentence. "Mr. Goo hopes this can be resolved privately." I didn't reply. 2 days later, Lena showed up at my building. The doorman called to let me know someone was asking for me. I said no and stayed upstairs, watching through the security feed as she stood there in a beige coat, arms folded, waiting. Eventually, she left. Grace laughed when I told her. "She really thought you'd let her talk her way out?" "I think she's realizing she was a placeholder." Lena had never been special, just convenient. What mattered now wasn't her or Ethan, it was the final step. One last move to close the circle. And I was ready to make it. I had always known that Ethan valued his image more than anything else. The suit, the car, the perfect LinkedIn profile, the curated reputation as a self-made CEO. He built his world like a stage set, clean from the front, hollow in the back. So I decided to collapse it from the inside. With Grace's help, I pulled together the documentation for a full audit request. The offshore accounts, the questionable consulting fees, the shell companies Lena had helped him register, it was all there. We submitted it to the Financial Investigation Bureau under my name. A week later, they opened an official case. Ethan tried to stay ahead of the damage. He released a preemptive statement admitting operational negligence and stepped down as acting CEO for the good of the company. He even posted a photo of himself in a hoodie, drinking tea by a window, with a caption about reflection and growth. It didn't work. Clients pulled deals. Partners paused contracts. A quiet blacklist began forming behind closed doors. And then came the lawsuit. One of the minor shareholders filed a civil suit for breach of fiduciary duty, naming both Ethan and Lena. They had used investor funds to pay for their retreats, including luxury hotels, spa packages, and, ironically, image consultants. The evidence was airtight. I attended the preliminary hearing just to watch. Ethan looked tired. His suit didn't fit as well. Lena sat beside him, pretending not to notice the cameras. Her foundation was too thick, probably trying to hide the stress breakout on her cheek. Their lawyer argued for a settlement. It was denied. I didn't smile. I just sat there, silent, as the judge read the charges aloud. When the session ended, I walked past them without looking. But I could feel Lena watching me, like she still didn't understand how this had all unraveled so quickly. She had spent months trying to replace me. Now, she was stuck picking up the pieces of a man who was collapsing in real time. That night, Grace came over with a bottle of champagne. "You did it," she said. "He's finished." "I'm not celebrating." "You should." "Not yet." There was still one last thing to do. I opened my laptop and logged into the foundation Ethan and I had registered during our second year of marriage. On paper, it was a nonprofit meant to support young entrepreneurs. In reality, it had become one of his tax shelters. But here's what he forgot: he'd listed me as the sole co-founder. And he never removed me. I pulled the registration documents, filed the dissolution paperwork, and issued a formal statement to the press. The Ava Chin initiative would be relaunching under new management, with a real mission and zero involvement from Ethan Gu. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. After the foundation was restructured, the media finally stopped calling. No more anonymous requests for comment. No more subtle messages from mutual acquaintances trying to understand my side. The noise faded. The silence returned. And I liked it. I moved into a new apartment, a corner unit on the 23rd floor with full-length windows and a clean, open kitchen. The kind of place that didn't carry shadows from before. One afternoon, while unpacking the last of the boxes, I found a photo tucked between old books. It was from our first year of marriage, Ethan and me at a charity dinner. Both of us smiling, eyes full of things I now knew were illusions. I didn't tear it up. I just placed it at the bottom of a drawer I'd probably never open again. That week, Grace invited me out to dinner. When I arrived, she was already seated at a quiet table in a restaurant neither of us could afford back in college. She poured me a drink and grinned. "You've been quiet lately." "I've had nothing to say." She tilted her head. "And yet the internet can't shut up." I shrugged. Lena had gone dark. Her accounts were locked. The last thing anyone saw from her was a cryptic story. Sometimes silence is strength. No one replied. Ethan had sold his car, moved out of his apartment, and taken down all his public-facing bios. A mutual friend said he was taking time to rebuild. Another said he was considering moving abroad. I didn't care. None of it changed the fact that the damage was done, and it was public. Permanent. And his own doing. Grace raised her glass. To survival? I clinked mine gently. To clarity. We didn't talk about Ethan or Lena after that. Just work, future plans, and an idea Grace had for launching her own consulting firm. She asked if I wanted in. "I'll think about it," I said. But I knew I would say yes. Later that night, back at my apartment, I stood by the window and looked out at the city, its lights sharp, alive, distant. Everything I'd walked through, everything I'd let fall, had led here. Not to revenge, not to victory, to quiet, to a version of myself I hadn't met in years. And I was just getting started. I didn't expect to run into Ethan again so soon. It happened on a Tuesday morning, in the lobby of a downtown office building. I was there for a meeting about a partnership grant. I'm not sure why he was there. Maybe trying to network. Maybe just trying to be seen. He looked thinner. Less sure of himself. Our eyes met. He hesitated. I didn't. I gave him a polite nod and walked past him without breaking stride. That was all. No confrontation. No small talk. No closure speech. Later, I got a text from an unknown number. But I knew who it was. You look good. I didn't reply. I showed Grace. And she rolled her eyes. Is he serious? He's nostalgic. He's desperate. I archived the number. The meeting that day went well. We secured a small grant for Grace's new venture. And the committee asked if we'd be open to mentoring young female entrepreneurs. We said yes. A week later, we hosted our first workshop. 10 women. All under 30. All building things, apps. Nonprofits. Community spaces. They were smart. Driven. Hungry. I saw pieces of myself in them. But also something more, a version of me that had never been interrupted by men like Ethan. After the session ended, one of them pulled me aside. I read about you. She said quietly. About what you did. I just wanted to say, thank you. I nodded. Build something better. She smiled. That's the plan. That night, I walked home alone. The city was warm. The streets still buzzed from daytime heat. I passed a bar where Ethan once took Lena. Back when they thought no one was watching. I didn't look inside. I didn't feel anything. Back home, I poured a glass of water, sat on the balcony, and opened a new document on my laptop. The title, Next Chapter. Not because I needed to write about the past. Because I finally had room for something new. Lena filed for bankruptcy first. It started quietly, a supplier lawsuit over unpaid services. Then a second. This time for breach of partnership terms. Within 2 weeks, her influencer management company folded, and she deleted her last public-facing account. No statements. No explanations. Just a slow vanishing. Grace sent me a link to a niche finance blog that picked up the story. Digital Darlings, What Happens When Influence Becomes Liability. They used a filtered photo of Lena from her wellness campaign days, soft lighting. Carefully posed. The headline hit harder than the content. Meanwhile, Ethan had resurfaced overseas. Singapore. Maybe. Or London. A friend mentioned he was trying to reinvent himself. I didn't ask. What he did now. Where he lived. Who he leaned on, it wasn't mine to care about anymore. I had my own meetings. My own timelines. My own quiet routine. The grant work was expanding. Grace's consultancy was landing its first high-retainer clients. And I had signed on as a partner, silent in name. Strategic in role. We worked well together. No pretenses. No need to perform for the sake of anyone else. At the end of that month, I visited my parents' house for the first time since the divorce. My mother served tea like always. Her expression unreadable. My father stayed mostly quiet. It wasn't until after dinner that my mother finally asked, "Do you regret any of it?" I shook my head. Not anymore. She nodded. That was all. Back at my apartment, I unpacked a small box I'd left sealed for too long. Inside was a photo strip from college, me, Grace, and another friend crammed into a photo booth, laughing so hard one of us had fallen halfway out of frame. I pinned it to the fridge. A reminder of something real. The next morning, I received a package, no sender listed. Inside was a bracelet I had once admired at a gallery show. A handwritten note on plain white paper read, "Sorry. E." I placed the note in the shredder. The bracelet I kept. Not out of sentiment. It was just pretty. The sky looked different that day. Not dramatically. Just a little clearer. The kind of light that makes everything sharp but not harsh. Like the world had exhaled. I had a full schedule, 3 meetings in the morning. Site visit in the afternoon. Dinner with a new partner in the evening, but I took the long route to the office anyway. I stopped for coffee. Walked through a street market. Watched a street artist paint swirls of color on a blank wall. I didn't check my phone. At noon, I arrived at the workspace we'd recently leased, 12 floors up. Glass all around. Minimalist furniture. White boards full of ideas. Grace was already there, arguing over fonts with a designer. She looked up. "You're late." I stopped to get perspective. She handed me a coffee. "Good. We'll need it." We spent the rest of the day finalizing a pitch for a multi-brand collaboration. It was clean, smart, and, more importantly, ours. No borrowed legacy. No stolen credit. No names we didn't want on the board. After the meeting ended, one of the newer team members, a young woman named Riley, lingered behind. She asked me if it ever got easier, letting go of things you thought were permanent. I thought about it. "It's not about ease," I said. "It's about not being afraid of the silence that follows." She nodded like she understood. That night, I walked home again. The city was familiar now. Not something to survive, but something to navigate. A system I understood. At a crosswalk, I saw a man who looked like Ethan. Tall. Sharp shoulders. Expensive watch. It wasn't him. Still, I smiled a little. Not because I missed him. Because I didn't. At home, I lit a single lamp. Turned off the overheads, and sat at my desk. There were emails to answer, calls to return, things to prepare, but I let them wait. I pulled out a fresh notebook, flipped past the cover page, and wrote 2 words at the top. Next move. Then I started writing. Not about Ethan. Not about Lena. Not even about the past. Just what came next.